Hi, I'm Samantha, and today I'm going to talk about communication in the workplace. You might remember as a child playing the game called telephone at school, in elementary school. They would have us sit in a circle, and the person to start off would get a message from the teacher, and their job was to tell the person next to them, whisper it to them, and they would whisper a sentence into the ear of the child sitting next to them, and that child in turn would whisper it to the next, and it would go all the way around the circle in this way until the very last child, and that last person was the one who said it out loud. Now, most of the time, as you know if you've played this game, the sentence that was repeated out loud at the end was never the same one that the teacher originally gave them. This is a good way to teach children about communication and how when something gets passed around too many times, it can come back changed and way different from where it started. It's really about listening and correctly passing on the message. Now, in the workplace, I think we've all been in situations where the communication was not clear and we ended up having a really hard time doing our job because we didn't have the right information, or perhaps we were in a meeting and we were not listening very well, so we were not able to properly carry out our jobs. So there's a couple different things that I'd like to talk about today that we can do to improve communication within the workplace. And I've myself worked in small offices and big offices, but the communication is key no matter what office or shop that you work in. And the three main things that I want to talk about have to do with active listening, asking questions, and providing feedback. Now, about listening. Just like we're taught in our speech classes to be an active listener while we're sitting in the audience, when you're in a meeting at work or getting instruction, it's really important to actively listen. If you're in a meeting, you're going to want to take a notepad so that you can take notes to refer to later on. Many times people find themselves in situations where they're in a group project where communication is key between all of the different employees in order to get the job done. So by taking notes and actively listening, you will be able to carry out your part of the job with minimum delays to anybody else in the group. The second thing I wanted to talk about is asking questions. If you're not clear on something, it's really important to ask questions, because if you try to carry out a job in the way you think you remember, it's very possible that you could be doing it wrong and it's going to make a setback in the office. Another thing that we need to do is to follow through and give feedback, because we're, again, just clarifying even more by giving feedback. I work in an office with physicians, and when we are working with patients, communication is really, really important, because if I'm not listening and a doctor tells me to give somebody an injection, just for an example, it's really important that I know exactly the name of the medication and the exact amount. And if I'm not active listening, I'm not going to know what medication to give. And there have been instances where a medication sounds similar to another medication and the wrong medication is given. And that can be very dangerous. So in my line of work, it's extra important to actively listen and to follow through and to always ask questions. I would never go and provide a treatment to a patient if I wasn't 100% certain of which medication I was supposed to give. I was talking to Bill, who works in a shop, and he was surprised at the lack of communication as he noticed three of the managers go into a meeting together. And they all came out, and although they had been in the same meeting together, each one of them approached him at different times throughout the day. And they each spoke to him about different things and provided different information. His understanding was one thing about his job, because they were providing him information about his job, but three different people who came out of the same meeting gave him different instruction. Now, what do you think happened there? That's a lack of communication. Although the same exact speaker said the same thing to all three people, they had three different ideas of what that speaker was really meant. Now, by asking questions in a situation like that, everybody could walk out of the meeting on the same page and give the same information. Only one person would need to pass it on at this point because everybody would be on the same page. So in a perfect world, every shop, every office would run smoothly. And the way we can make that better is just by asking questions, actively listening, and providing feedback. Thank you for listening.